Hello, my name is Julie Hodgson, and I was a teacher at Chapel Street. I started there in 1979. I was employed as a class teacher. In those days, the one end of the school, the top end as we called it, had been converted into a nursery school in 1973. Prior to that, the building had been empty, apart from the youth club and the ATS. And then, of course, there was the boxing club down in the bottom end. There were 2 nursery classes in those days, and we were only allowed to use the school hall on special occasions. So we were really quite squashed at one end of the building. There were 3 teachers, 1 head teacher, and 3 nursery nurses. And I believe that we had in those days 26 children in each class. It was always a very happy school, and there was a fantastic atmosphere. The children were happy, the parents were happy, and the staff were happy. And the nursery school became an early years centre of excellence, and it's now a children's centre from 2 years to 5 years. The building was built in 1880, and it was Luton grey brick and lighter red dressing, and the roof was of Welsh slate. The lead was stolen regularly from the roof. The water pouring in, we didn't know the lead had been stolen until the water poured in. It opened in 1861 as a boys' penny school, as it was called. Usually schools cost 2p a week, but this school was only a penny because there were so many parents in the area in receipt of the poor relief. In 1889, girls were admitted, but they were separated. And I think that's why the 2 playgrounds had a railing across the middle, one for the girls and one for the boys. The school always kept a very comprehensive logbook, which was fascinating to read. And it's still in the school archives, a huge leather-bound book. And we in the nursery school also kept a logbook. And until the year 2000-ish, when, of course, computers did the job and we didn't need to write the logbook by hand. So in the old logbook, there were photographs and records of the school inspections, of the progress of the pupils, the attendance, and all of the illnesses were written down, which was really interesting. During the war, I don't know which war these were built, but underneath the top playground is a maze of air raid shelters, and they're still there under the playground. I had a chance to go and see them once. I didn't fancy going down those dark steps, but one of our teachers did. And the visits to the underground shelters were all recorded in the school logbook during the war. How many times all the children in the school were to go down there. I can't remember how many children there were in the school at that time, but I think there were at least 250 or 300. At night time, the local people were allowed to go down into the shelters, so they must have been really big. When I was at school, which was from the 1950s onwards, we had no computers. We all sat at a wooden desk with a flap-up lid, which we had to scrub and clean before every school holiday, and everything had to be written down. I think the classes were bigger in those days, and I can remember being kind of quite squashed. I actually went to Denby Road Primary School, and it was a happy school, but I did have a favourite teacher while I was there, and that's where I discovered that I was quite good at painting and art, and I won a Brook Bond painting competition while I was there. I didn't have school meals because our school meals were brought to the school, and my mum always cooked at lunchtime, and so I walked the mile home to have my lunch and then back to school for the afternoon. Because in those days, we had a long lunch break. My favourite subject was art, but I loved geography as well, and I loved writing stories. We didn't have a school council or anything like that. You just had to do what the teachers said, and that was all there was to it. I don't remember going on any school trips. And certainly at Denby Road, we had no school field. And we did have a school trip every week to the nearest playing field. We didn't have computers or iPads right up until obviously I left school, and I'd been teaching for almost 30 years before the computers came in. Everything had to be recorded. And when I started teaching, there was really nothing much to help you. If you wanted to do some worksheets with the children, they had to be done on a Roneo duplicator, and there was a special cupboard at school, and you put the duplicating paper in the top, made sure it was the right way round, and put it on the roller, and you had to turn the handle, I think twice, to get every printed copy off for your class to use. My first class that I had 44 8 to 9 year olds in the junior school that I was first employed in, and they had a music lesson every week, and the teacher that did the music lesson just couldn't get his piano into the classroom properly because there were so many school desks. But it was great fun. Of course, there was the mixing of the ink. If you got to be an ink monitor, it was a really honour, because you got this bottle of powder and you had to put it into a big container and add water to it and stir it all up and then pour it out into all of the inkwells that fitted into all of the desks. And that's another thing to remember, because, if you weren't careful, there was ink running everywhere. And of course, there often was in the lessons if people messed about with their ink. And then you'd get into real bad trouble if you spilt ink all over your school books. And of course, you had these pens with these nibs, didn't we? In those days, my goodness me, they were a nightmare as well. And you didn't get allocated a new nib until the other one was absolutely, you were writing like a spider. In the nursery school, we installed computers in each of the classrooms for the children to use. And it was just absolutely amazing how even a 3-year-old would soon get to grips with how to make it all work. We had a big screen, a smart board in the classrooms before I left as well, and touch screens and everything. And it was just amazing how quickly very young children grasp the concept far better than we ever did, I think. I mean, I'm still struggling now with computer skills, but I mean, they've got it all off to a T nowadays, haven't they? Some interesting things that happened in the year 2000. We planted a millennium capsule that was buried in the playground outside in the garden, and we were very much involved, the parents, in everything we did. One of the most important things was the carnival, and the parents had organised it themselves. They had a carnival group which met every week, and we had various themes each year, obviously, for the carnival, and a huge team of parents worked to provide the carnival floats, and we hired or got volunteers for driving a lorry, and the children and the families and the staff were all involved in the Luton carnivals, and it was just a great way of getting the parents together. I remember when I must have been about 13, I actually went to Chapel Henry School to take part in a quiz. I went to Icknield, a secondary school, and a team came from our school to this school, and I remember going into the school hall for a quiz, and that was in the mid-1950s. So I guess I've had connections with Chapel Street for quite a long while, really. I was at Chapel Street from 1979 until I retired in 2003. I can honestly say it was such a happy place to be. I thoroughly enjoyed all of my school years, and I thoroughly enjoyed all of my teaching years. In fact, I enjoyed it so much that I carried on doing some supply teaching even after I'd retired at Chapel Street, of course.